I landed the biggest contract my company had seen in years. Months of sacrifice, sleepless nights, missed family moments. My boss's response. 2 words that changed everything. It was last Thursday, 6:30 in the evening, still in the office, still in the same shirt I had been wearing since 6 that morning. My tie was crumpled in my pocket, my coffee had gone cold hours ago, and my eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets too long. But none of that mattered, not in that moment. Not when I hit send on that final email and watched the reply roll in. The client was in. Not just any client. I landed a multi-million-dollar deal with a shipping firm out of Houston, the kind of client our company had been trying to woo for years. I had spent 4 months chasing that lead. 4 months of missing dinners with my wife, skipping weekends with my kid, and pulling all-nighters just to put together a pitch deck polished enough to pass for gold. And you know what my boss said when I told him? "That's great, Mike. Probably just good timing. Keep working hard." That was it. Not even a handshake. I stood there in his doorway for a second longer than I should have, waiting for, I don't even know what. "Oh, well done, maybe. A good job. Or we're lucky to have you." Hell, even just a damn smile. Instead, he nodded toward a pile of folders on his desk and told me we were behind on Q3 outreach. "No time to slow down," he said. "Momentum is everything." I walked back to my desk, chest hollow, adrenaline still rattling in my ribs from the win. But that moment, him brushing it off like I had just stumbled into a win instead of earning it, something about that cut deep. And it was not the first time, either. There was a pattern to all this. And for the first time in years, I could feel it building inside me. A storm, quiet but real. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the office ceiling tiles like they might have answers, and thought, how long can a man keep showing up when no one sees him? Because here is the truth. This deal was not some fluke. It was the result of sacrifice. And that sacrifice? It came with a price. One I had been paying for a long, long time. And as I sat there, staring down the barrel of another ignored victory, I knew one thing for sure. This was not just about a contract anymore. It was about me. And whether I was finally ready to stop waiting for someone else to see my worth. Because I was done being invisible. But that moment in the hallway, that was the start of something I never saw coming. It started back in January. Cold, gray mornings, frost on the windshield, my breath fogging up the inside of the car while I waited for the heat to kick in. That was when I first got the lead, through a buddy of mine from college who now runs procurement for a shipping outfit in Houston. He mentioned they were shopping for a new logistics partner, and I jumped on it like it was the last life raft on a sinking ship. That same week, my daughter had a piano recital. She had been practicing Clair de Lune for a month, and I promised her I would be front row. But the Houston client needed a last-minute proposal review at the same time. And I chose the proposal. My wife did not speak to me for 2 days. My daughter cried herself to sleep that night. I still have not forgiven myself for missing it. But that was just the beginning. There were late-night Zoom calls I took from gas station parking lots, hotel lobbies, even the floor of a quiet stairwell during my brother's birthday dinner. There were weekends I disappeared into spreadsheets, whiteboarding logistics flow until my brain felt like oatmeal. I skipped date nights, bedtime stories, backyard BBQs. I even worked through the flu once, half-conscious, just to prep a cost savings breakdown before the client's Monday call. And every time I thought about stopping, about pulling back even just a little, I heard my boss's voice in the back of my mind. The way he always said, "Hustle is the only difference between you and the guy who replaces you." That stuck with me like a stain I could not scrub out. I gave everything to land that contract. Everything. I studied the client's business model like I was prepping for brain surgery. I mapped out their current vendors, projected their long-haul inefficiencies, and built a custom solution that would save them 7 figures a year. When I pitched it, they were stunned. Said no one had ever come to the table with something so airtight. I should have felt proud. And for a moment, I did. But then came that meeting with my boss. The one where he glanced at the contract, called it lucky timing, and pivoted straight into talking about cold leads in Delaware. Like I had just tripped into success by accident. Like the months of blood, sweat, and silence I poured into this deal did not even matter. I walked back to my cubicle, heart pounding with this strange mix of pride and rage. My phone buzzed my wife again. I ignored it, not because I wanted to, but because I already knew what the message would say. "We need to talk." The weight of everything was starting to crush down on me. Not just the job, The silence at home. The distance in my daughter's eyes. The growing suspicion that I was grinding myself into dust for a place that would not even notice when I was gone. And worse, maybe they never had. But what I did not know yet was that this contract, the one they called luck, was about to change more than just my job. It was going to expose everything. And I mean everything. Because 2 days later, I overheard something in the break room that changed the way I saw my boss forever. I was microwaving day-old pasta, still riding that weird emotional seesaw between pride and resentment, when I heard them through the break room wall. My boss, Greg, I should probably mention his name by now, was on a call. I could tell because he always used that fake smooth voice whenever he talked to people above him. You know the type. That polished, over-friendly tone that made your skin crawl if you listened too close. At first, I was not really paying attention. I was just zoning out, staring at my Tupperware rotating in the microwave like it held answers. But then I heard him say my name. Yeah, Mike Thompson. He is decent with follow-ups. Good timing on his part. That Houston account fell into his lap. Fell into my lap? I stepped closer, standing just out of view near the break room door. He kept talking. No, I am not worried about him going anywhere. He is loyal to a fault. He works hard, sure, but he does not ask for much. Perfect kind of guy to keep the pipeline moving. There it was. Not essential, not valuable, just useful, like a wrench in a toolbox. Replaceable, forgettable. I stood there, the microwave beeping behind me, hands clenched into fists. My lunch had gone cold again, but I did not move. Because in that moment, something snapped in my chest. Not like a break, more like a crack that had always been there finally widening. I thought back to the other times that should have tipped me off. Like last year, when I organized the client summit in Phoenix. I was the one who flew out early, handled the vendor contracts, set up the presentation deck, and kept the whole thing from crashing. Greg showed up the morning of, strolled into the room with his coffee, took the mic, and introduced himself as the lead on the project. I stood in the back, nodding like an idiot, while everyone applauded him for a job I had bled over. Or the time I mentored the new hires, and one of them landed a quick sale. Greg gave him the quarterly bonus and told me I had done my part by building team culture. It was always like that. Me doing the work, him taking the credit. And somehow, I had convinced myself it was fine. That my time would come. That eventually, someone would notice. But now I saw it for what it really was. A pattern. A slow, steady erasure. And this latest deal, the Houston contract, should have been the moment everything changed. Instead, it became the final nail in a coffin I did not even know was being built around me. I left the break room without touching my lunch. My stomach felt too tight to eat anyway. I walked past my cubicle, out into the stairwell, and sat on the concrete steps, phone in hand. I finally opened the message from my wife. We need to talk tonight. I mean really talk. No emojis. No soft landings. I stared at that screen, knowing exactly what it meant. The job I gave everything to protect? It was tearing apart the one thing I had left outside of it. And for what? A pat on the back? Another ignored victory? No. This was more than just bad luck or missed recognition. This was systemic. Intentional. And I was done pretending otherwise. That night, as I walked through my front door, I had no idea just how much I was about to lose, or what it would finally push me to do. When I walked through the door that night, everything felt wrong. The lights were on, but the house was quiet, too quiet. No cartoons playing in the background. No little feet running to greet me. My daughter was already in bed, and my wife, Amanda, was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing in particular. She did not even look up when I walked in. Her purse was by the door. That was the first thing I noticed. It was zipped up tight, keys on top. Like she had been debating whether to leave before I got home. I said her name, but she just exhaled through her nose and motioned for me to sit. And right there, in the same living room where we had once danced barefoot to old records, where our daughter took her first steps, where we used to argue over pizza toppings and laugh about it, my wife looked me in the eye and asked if I even saw us anymore. She told me she was tired of feeling like a ghost in her own home. Said every conversation we had lately was about work or bills or how tired I was. Said our daughter had started asking why daddy never smiles anymore. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but I could not find the words. Because deep down, I knew she was not wrong. I tried to explain about the Houston contract, how it was going to change things. I told her it was a huge win, something that could finally put us in a better place financially. I even mentioned the bonus Greg had hinted at in passing, the one that was still under review. Amanda blinked. Her voice did not rise, but it got sharper. So you gave up your weekends, your health, and your family for a maybe? That hit harder than anything my boss had ever said, and it got worse. She pulled out a printout of a calendar from the fridge, our family calendar, the one with color-coded boxes for school events, date nights, and doctor appointments. Do you know what these all have in common? She asked. I stared at it, heart sinking. Half of them were events I had missed. Recital, doctor visit, parent-teacher meeting, our anniversary dinner. Every single one had a red circle around it. Every single one had a post-it note on top that said, rescheduled due to work. Amanda's voice cracked when she said the last part. I am not asking you to quit. I am asking if there is anything left of you for us. I sat there in silence, blinking hard. I wanted to promise her everything would change, that this win at work was going to turn the corner for us, that it was all worth it. But even as the words formed in my head, I knew they would sound hollow. Because if my job could not even recognize what I had done, if they could not even give me credit for pulling off the biggest deal the company had seen in 5 years, then what the hell was I sacrificing everything for? Amanda did not give me an ultimatum that night, but I could feel it hanging in the air like smoke. We had reached a line, and I was the only one who could decide which side I was going to stand on. But what she did not know, what I did not know at the time, was that something bigger had already been set in motion behind the scenes. Something that was about to force my hand in a way I never expected. Because the very next morning, I walked into the office and found my name missing from the deal summary report. I came in early the next morning. Like always. Still dark outside. The janitor nodding at me like he always did when I beat the sun to the parking lot. I headed straight for the weekly report folder on our internal server. It was routine. I checked it every Friday. That week's deal tracker was already live. I opened it, half expecting to see my name next to the Houston account. Nothing. Not even in the lead contact column. Just blank. I blinked a few times, refreshed the page, even closed the browser and reloaded the server. Still blank. But that was not the worst part. Greg's name? It was all over the document. He was listed as strategic lead, client contact, and primary closer. 3 titles. All his. Mine. Nowhere. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my ears. This was not a typo. This was not some intern messing up a form. This was deliberate. He had rewritten history. And just like that, the biggest win of my career had been stolen. At first, I just sat there in shock. It was like getting punched in the gut and being too stunned to breathe. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that it was just a formatting issue, that maybe they would fix it before the company-wide meeting later that morning. But I already knew better. Because this was not the first time my name had disappeared from something important. Last year, there was a team-wide push to improve client retention. I had written the framework that became the backbone of our new protocol, response templates, check-in schedules, even the damn email subject lines. When the new strategy was rolled out, Greg presented it to the board like it was his baby. He thanked the team, then gave himself a special shout-out for leading innovation. I had chalked it up to office politics, told myself the work mattered more than the credit. But now I saw it for what it was. A pattern. A calculated one. He never wanted me to rise too far. Never wanted anyone else in the spotlight. Because as long as I stayed one rung beneath him, he could climb higher on my back. I stood up, walked straight to his office, and saw him sipping his usual black coffee like it was just another normal day. I asked about the report. Told him my name was missing. He did not even flinch. Oh, he said, barely looking up. Yeah, I had to consolidate the contact entries. You know how messy those reports can look. You're still in the internal notes. Internal notes. Like that meant anything. I stood there for a long moment, jaw tight. I wanted to scream, to flip his desk, to call him out for the liar he was. But I knew how that would look. Knew how quickly it would get turned around on me. Mike's too emotional. Mike's unstable. Mike cannot be trusted with clients. So I swallowed it. Again. But something shifted in me right then. Not anger. Not sadness. Resolve. Because if I was going to be erased from this chapter, I was damn sure going to write the next one myself. And it was not going to include Greg. That weekend, I made a call I never thought I would make, to someone who once offered me a way out. I still had the number saved. It sat untouched in my phone for almost 2 years. Every once in a while, I would scroll past it, and think about what could have been if I had said yes back then. The contact name just read, Travis S. No title, no company, just that. Travis was an old colleague. We met back when I was fresh out of college, still hungry, still wide-eyed enough to think merit would carry me to the top. He was one of the few people who actually noticed when I pulled weight beyond my title. We kept in touch after he left the company, said he was starting something new, something lean, agile, no corporate red tape. He had offered me a spot, said he needed someone like me to help build the backbone. I turned him down, told him I needed the security, the benefits, the stability for my family. Back then, I thought loyalty would get me further than risk ever could. That weekend, I sat in my garage, the place where I went to be invisible. I stared at the concrete floor, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the call button. Then I pressed it. He picked up on the second ring. Same voice. Calm, sharp, steady. Mike Thompson, he said, like he already knew why I was calling. I did not dance around it. I told him everything. The Houston deal, the report, the erasure, the years of being used and sidelined like I was disposable. He did not sound surprised. I knew it would happen eventually, he said. Guys like Greg, they only keep people like you around until you get too bright. Then they shade you. I asked him straight up, is your offer still open? There was a pause. Then he said, you would not be joining anymore. You would be building with me. He told me the company had grown, that he had landed a few seed investors. They were gearing up to launch a new division, logistics consulting, and needed someone to lead it. Someone who knew the grind, who had done the real work, who could speak the language of both clients and chaos. I did not say yes right then, but I did not say no either. Instead, I asked for the weekend to think it over. I hung up and stared out at the street. The neighborhood kids were playing catch. A neighbor waved from his driveway. For a second, I imagined what it would feel like to tell Amanda, to walk into the living room and say, I'm done with them. I'm betting on us now. But just as quickly, the doubts started creeping in. What if it failed? What if I walked away from everything I had built and ended up with nothing? Then again, what had I really built? A life where my wins were buried, where my daughter asked if I was mad every time I walked in the door, where I had become a ghost in my own story. That night, Amanda found me still sitting in the garage. She did not say much, just sat beside me on the bench and asked, are you okay? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, I told the truth. No, but I think I know what I need to do. Monday morning, I walked into the office, not to work, but to make a move Greg never saw coming. I walked into the office just after 8, not in my usual rushed, coffee-juggling panic, but calm, focused. I wore my best shirt, the navy one Amanda got me for our anniversary, the one I never wore because I kept waiting for the right day. Today was that day. I walked past the receptionist, past the bullpen, past the corner where I had spent the last 6 years grinding out deals, prepping pitches, and chasing wins that never had my name on them. Greg's door was open. He was hunched over his desk, typing with one hand, coffee in the other, the usual smug look stretched across his face. He barely glanced up. I stepped inside, shut the door, and sat down across from him without asking. Got a minute? He looked up then, that forced half-smile already forming. Make it quick, Mike. I've got a call with the board at 9. I nodded. Perfect. Then this will not take long. I reached into my bag and slid a folder across his desk. Printed inside were the entire email thread with the Houston client, every pitch deck revision, my follow-up logs, call summaries, and prep notes. Dates, timestamps, everything with my name on it. He opened it, skimmed the first few pages, and chuckled. You building a scrapbook now? I did not smile. That deal was mine. Every inch of it. You scrubbed my name from the report, you took my credit, and you lied to leadership about who brought it in. He leaned back in his chair, expression flattening. Mike, come on. We are a team. That account was a group effort. No, I said, voice steady. It was not. You know it. I know it. And soon enough, everyone else will know it too. His jaw tensed. I stood up, pulled out a sealed envelope, and dropped it on the folder. My resignation letter. I am done, I said. Effective immediately. His mouth opened like he was about to protest, to remind me of the contracts, the non-competes, the you are lucky to be here nonsense he had fed me over the years. But before he could speak, I added, I have already sent everything to HR, including documentation of every instance you have taken credit for work you did not do. I also blind copied the legal team and the board liaison. Check your inbox. He was silent now, pale. I gave him one last look. I spent 6 years making this place better. You spent 6 years making sure no one noticed. But I noticed. And I am not going to spend another 6 sacrificing my life to be someone else's shadow. Then I walked out. No applause. No speech. Just silence. And that silence? It felt better than any recognition I had ever hoped for. As I passed my old desk, a few coworkers looked up. I nodded at them, not stopping. I did not owe anyone an explanation. My story was not ending here. It was just beginning. That night, Amanda asked me what came next. I told her the truth. I had no idea. But the next morning, I got a message that would change everything. I barely slept that night. Amanda lay beside me, her hand resting on my chest like she was trying to anchor me in place. I stared at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing in. I had just torched 6 years of my life in a single morning. No severance, no safety net, no backup plan. Just a quiet promise to myself that I would not be invisible anymore. At 6:30 the next morning, my phone buzzed. One new message. It was from Travis. Saw the news. You free to talk today? I did not even hesitate. I typed back 2 words. Call now. He did. No small talk this time. Just straight to it. He told me they had closed their Series A round 3 weeks ago. Funding secured. New contracts coming in. They were expanding fast, faster than expected. His co-founder had just stepped back due to burnout, and they needed someone who could take over operations for the new logistics branch. You would not be a cog in the machine, Travis said. You would build the machine. The pay was solid. Not what I had been making, but close. Stock options. Full benefits. Remote flexibility. And one thing Greg never offered me in 6 years, actual ownership. Travis wanted a partner, not an underling. I asked him one question, why now? He paused, then said, because I watched you stay loyal to a place that never deserved you. And I figured, if you can do all that for them, imagine what you could do when someone actually backs you. That stopped me cold. No pitch deck. No fluff. Just belief. I told him I would need a few days to talk to Amanda, to wrap my head around things. He said, take the weekend. But Mike, this door, it is wide open. I hung up and just sat there, phone in my lap, breath catching a little in my throat. Not from fear, from relief. Like I had been holding something heavy for years and finally set it down. Amanda walked into the room, still in her robe, coffee in hand. I looked at her and said, I think something good just happened. She smiled, tired but real. It is about time. I told her everything. Travis, the offer, the risk, the unknowns. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, I do not care if it is risky. I care if you come home and still recognize yourself. That moment, that was when I knew. I was not going back. Not to that office. Not to that life. Not to being the guy behind the guy. But of course, Greg was not done yet. Because by Monday morning, I found out exactly how far he was willing to go to protect his little kingdom. An email from HR hit my inbox. One that made it clear Greg was trying to burn me on my way out. Monday morning. I had barely finished my coffee when the email hit my inbox. Subject line, urgent follow-up regarding your departure. It was from Caroline in HR, polite, overly formal, like someone walking on glass. I opened it, eyes scanning fast. At first, it read like a routine exit formality. Thank you for your service, return company property, etc. But buried halfway down was the real hit. We have received internal concerns regarding your handling of client communications and intellectual property during your tenure. That was Greg's move. I could see his fingerprints all over it. He was trying to get ahead of the truth, paint me as unstable, maybe even unethical. He was laying the groundwork. Because once the board saw the evidence I submitted, once the truth about the Houston deal reached the top, he would need a scapegoat. He was betting they would believe him over me, that I would just disappear quietly. I almost laughed. Instead, I called Caroline. No anger, no panic, just clarity. I told her I had documented everything. Emails, Slack messages, calendar logs, even a screen recording of Greg forwarding my proposal to himself and stripping the metadata before the final submission. I offered to send it all again, this time CCNG Legal directly. There was a long pause. Then she said, Understood, Mike. I will escalate this immediately. I hung up and sat back in my chair, heart racing. He really thought he could rewrite the ending. that he could smear me into silence. But he did not understand who I had become. Not the desperate employee who missed bedtime stories for a shot at validation. Not the guy who swallowed his words to keep the peace. I was done playing quiet. I sent one final email to the Houston client directly. Short, professional, but honest. I thanked them for the opportunity. I told them I was moving on, but wanted them to know how much I had appreciated working with them. 2 hours later, I got a reply from their VP. We had no idea you were leaving. Greg said you had nothing to do with this deal. That changes how we feel about continuing. I stared at the screen. Everything was shifting now, faster than Greg could control. And for the first time, it was not him holding the pen. It was me. The final blow came later that night, from someone I never expected to hear from again. It was late. Amanda was upstairs reading, the house finally quiet again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a warm beer, staring at nothing in particular when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end? Greg's boss. The regional director. The guy 3 rungs above him that nobody ever heard from unless something had gone seriously sideways. He did not waste time. He said he had reviewed the files I submitted. Said he had also spoken with Houston. The client confirmed what I already knew. That Greg lied. That I was the reason they signed. Then he said something I will never forget. Greg is being placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation. I sat there frozen. Not because I was surprised, but because I finally felt it. Vindication. Not the loud kind. Not the movie scene kind where you kick down doors and yell. I told you so. This was quiet. Calm. Solid. Like standing up after being punched in the gut and realizing the pain is finally gone. He offered to meet. Said there might still be a path forward for me at the company. Promotion, leadership track, maybe even department head. I let him finish. Then I said no. I thanked him for the call, told him I appreciated the honesty, but that I had already made my choice. I am building something new, I said. Something mine. He paused, then replied, I do not blame you. That was it. After I hung up, I went upstairs, kissed Amanda on the forehead, and stood in the doorway of my daughter's room for a long time, just watching her breathe. For the first time in years, I did not feel like a man chasing approval. I felt like a man who had taken back his name. Next morning, I met Travis at a diner downtown. We shook hands, looked each other in the eye, and sealed the deal. I was in. Partner. Founder. Builder. This time, no one would rewrite the story behind my back. Because this time, I was writing it myself. So if you are reading this, wondering whether it is worth it to walk away from a place that does not see you, let me tell you. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your future is stop begging for a seat at someone else's table and build your own.